Live from Chicago, this is Bruce DuMont with our Beyond the Beltway analysis of national politics, featuring occasional injections of rumor and innuendo, all offered up by our panel of political insiders, pundits, power brokers, public servants, professors, and most importantly, plain-speaking Americans from coast to coast. Tonight featuring commentary by independent Derek Addis, Republican Jeannie Ives, Republican Jeff Hom, and progressive Don Rose. Our program tonight coming to you from our home base at the Museum of Broadcast Communications in Chicago, where our toll-free lines are open at 1-800-723-8289. That's 1-800-723-8289. If you'd like to email me a comment, it's brucedumont@museum.tv. If you want to tweet me a comment, it's at Dumo, at D-U-M-O. And, of course, you can join us on the World Wide Web at beyondthebeltway.com. And you can also join us at the Beyond the Beltway with Bruce Dumont Facebook page. That's live, the audio and video, every moment of the 2-hour discussion. You can find us there, and it's great to have you with us. Another packed 2 hours of discussion this evening. We've got a great panel for you. Jeannie Ives joins us. She is a former state legislator, a graduate of West Point, leader of the conservative Republican movement here in the state of Illinois. And Jeannie, you have sort of international interests because you've got some sons that are in the military as well. The world is focusing at the moment on what's happening in Venezuela, and also on the borders with Brazil and the borders with Colombia, where those countries are trying to get humanitarian aid into Venezuela, and they're being stopped by Venezuelan troops who are allied with President Maduro. Speak to the Americans that want to know why is this a fight we should be interested in?
Well, it's not just a fight about democracy. It's also about the security of kind of the South America and what's going on there. And it also shows our power in that region. So if we're going to project power down in South America, which we want to do, we want to help control things there. We have economic interests there. Then this is something that we should be involved in. To what degree, that is going to be up to debate. Certainly, the humanitarian efforts that we have put forward should be honored by the Maduro government. They weren't. In fact, it ended up in violence. It ended up with at least 2 dead. But when we look at this geographically, we are standing on the side of democracy, and we are standing on the side of 50 other countries that have also said that they believe that we need a political solution here and that Maduro needs to step away. That's a position that we want to be in.
Don Rose, welcome. You are our progressive guest, one of the legendary political strategists in Illinois history. Nice to have you with us. What's your reaction? You take a different perspective, generally speaking, but what do you think's happening down there?
Well, I would certainly am on the insurgent side. I think Maduro is just horrendous, and the stopping humanitarian aid is just beyond disgusting. However, I am a non-interventionist.
Right.
In general, and I think every intervention we've made in the past 30, 40 years have been catastrophic. Mm-hmm. And I would like to lend whatever support we can, if there is any way of getting financial or other aid to the insurgent side. However, we may help the military turn around there, and that's going to be the key. Mm-hmm. I am for that. I am certainly not for military intervention. Mm-hmm. A wise general once said, anybody who gets caught in the middle of somebody else's civil war is nuts.
Mm-hmm. Jeff Hom is our young Republican. Jeff, what's your take?
I don't think that I'd heard that military intervention was being seriously entertained. I would agree.
All things were on the table, is what the president said.
Okay. I think that this is a problem that it's. I don't know that it's been clear who the good guys and the bad guys are in any other scenario like this, before. And it's surprising when you see people like Ilhan Omar and Alexandria Ocasio-Cortez on the side of the Maduro government, especially when you see what they just did with the humanitarian convoys. I think this is a diplomatic problem that needs to be solved with diplomacy, and I would be against military intervention by the United States. It wouldn't make any sense to me.
Derek Addis is our independent. Derek, nice to have you back on this broadcast. What's your take on whether or not there's a role for the U.S. to play in Venezuela?
Yeah, so to echo Don's words, non-interventionist as well, having served in Iraq twice myself, sending military into a region that kind of already is in some sort of turmoil, or if there's some government toppling to be had, it always leads to a power vacuum and it never bodes well for us or the region, because more importantly, it's not even about us at the end of the day. It doesn't matter if we want to spread democracy or whatever we think is best for someone else, and I think that's where AOC comes from with that perception that Maduro should be left alone. I do agree, though, that preventing humanitarian aid for coming into people that need it, that is a pretty egregious thing to do.
I mean, they're breaking into zoos they broke into a zoo to eat to kill a horse to eat it. That's how bad the food crisis is there.
Jeannie, there's a lot of bad guys in the world. Maduro is one of them. Are we setting up a precedent for future involvement?
Well, we don't know. When he says that all options are on the table, we don't know how far that would go. That could be that we help arm Colombians and Brazilians who then use their influence to help, affect a political change in that country. It doesn't mean that we have military boots on the ground in there occupying. I think actually what Trump has proven that he's opposed to that, from everything from drawing out of Afghanistan to drawing out of Syria to everything like that. I think that if he wants to provide military support to either one of those folks, I think that's a different scenario. But I think that this could probably be solved with diplomacy. I think when you've got 50 united countries united against Maduro, and you've got the pressure of what actually looks like a very credible rebellion going on, I think if we were able to provide aid to that rebellion, I think that we'll be successful.
Is this a rebellion that is a true rebellion of the people, or is there CIA fingerprints on this?
I don't know. They had an election, didn't they?
Yeah,
and
but
they elected somebody different.
But
and new.
there was rumblings that
So-
this recent uprising of
Right.
that was because of our administration's meddling in those dealings. So
Okay.
Yeah.
Is that okay, Don, that the CIA has been involved in Latin America for 50, 60 years? I mean,
Well, at least they're not murdering anybody at the moment.
yeah, and to bring sorry, go ahead.
No, I agree. It is quite possible they had a hand in it, but it is also a genuine people's upsurge, which it doesn't happen by the CIA itself.
right.
That's right.
Yeah, I mean, it's hard to look at.
But I mean, Guido looks like, he looks like a central casting leader of the 21st century. He's telegenic, he's articulate. I mean, he looks like a.
You know what's interesting is he actually escaped and went over the border to Colombia, and now there's a big question mark whether or not he is even going to be able to return. So you've got the leader of they're calling the opposition. He's actually calling himself the rightful president,
Right.
and he's not even in country right now. So
That's happened
very
to a lot
different.
of leaders of successful rebellions.
Yes.
Yeah. 1-800-723-8289 if you'd like to weigh in on what role, if any, the United States should have in Venezuela. Do give us a call. When we come back, we're going to head halfway around the world to North Korea and to Vietnam specifically, with the president and the chairman of North Korea will be meeting this week. Back shortly.
Live from Chicago, it's Saturday Night Live, The Experience. For the first time ever, get an inside look at the making of SNL. Over 500 artifacts direct from the show. Be a part of Wayne's World, Weekend Update, and so much more. Experience all it takes to put the show together. Now at the Museum of Broadcast Communications at 360 North State Street in Chicago. For tickets, visit museum.tv.
A line is a powerful thing. It connects the global economy to your living room. Cleaner air to stronger markets. Factory floors to less crowded roads. Today's progress to tomorrow's promise. Norfolk Southern. One line, infinite possibilities.
Bruce DuMont in Chicago. We'll talk about North Korea and the president's trip there in just a little bit, or at least the trip to Vietnam to talk about North Korea. But I want to talk about another issue that come up. In fact, it was a week ago tonight on 60 Minutes that Andrew McCabe became more of a household name to more people because of his actions on, or his revelations on that show. And then in the interviews that followed throughout the week, Andrew McCabe, the former deputy head of the FBI, basically said that at one point, following the election of Donald Trump, he felt, and he said that his investigative team felt, that Donald Trump might be an asset, a Russian asset. And so he began his investigation.
That's so absurd.
Let's go around the table, and we'll start with you, Jeff, and then I want to...
That is absolutely absurd, right? If you look at McCabe's interviews and Comey's interviews, these guys were basically just upset that they're, so McCabe is blindly loyal to Comey, and all of this was because of it's in revenge for Comey being fired publicly. This is a man who the Inspector General of the Department of Justice said that, or I'm sorry, of the FBI, said that he was fired, he should be fired for repeatedly making false statements. And now we're hanging on every word of his when he's on a book tour. It makes no sense to me at all.
How do you see it?
Yes, so if I'm not mistaken, the word is compromat, and it's the KGB would look to make into someone an asset who is unknowingly an asset because they were just that dumb. And I think that a lot of the actions that our president exhibits are those of someone who could be a compromat, meaning he doesn't even know that he's doing the things
That's absurd.
that were,
Oh my.
So
designed for him to do.
So he's a Manchurian candidate? I mean...
No, he was dealing with Russia through his agents
Yes.
to build a hotel.
Yes.
He never expected to be elected president.
Absolutely.
And whatever he was doing, he may have been totally unwitting as to the fact that it might be compromised. And I think he was caught with his pants down getting elected. And I think it is very logical, whether you consider him a witting asset or a useful idiot or whatever, it's a very legitimate inquiry.
It's absolutely not a legitimate inquiry to think that you're going to use the 25th Amendment, however, to take him out of office.
A duly elected
Plus-
president.
plus,
I
absolutely
agree with the 25th
Okay.
Amendment. There was a discussion of it, but it was a non-starter from the beginning.
To have that discussion is preposterous. You would have to say that he's incapacitated in some way. These guys are going to what, his mental capacity or whatever. I mean, it's absurd. The idea here
if you
that
remember way back, there was this same discussion. They did not know who was making it, but that 25th Amendment issue was raised way early in his
I know,
in
and
his
how
tenure.
absurd is that? How absurd is that? Has he ever shown that the ability to not rule or to not govern? Has he ever shown that?
I mean,
absolutely not. This is
wish casting.
Let me ask
this
this.
tells you how unhinged the far left is,
Well,
and
I believe
embedded
the
they
president
are.
is unhinged with the words that he uses
he's
and the way
not.
that he
No, he's
decides
not.
to govern. I
Look,
mean, this is, and look,
that
don't
is
get me wrong.
not-
I am a disruptor. I like disruptive things, but this is not the way to create disruption within the presidency.
What's disruption? What disruption has he created? What disruption? He
The
is
discourse
running
in
his
this
government
country has
really
become-
well.
It was already
It-
becoming polarized, and now we have this kind of
Polarized.
almost
And,
like
AOC.
Comey and
A-
McCabe are not the far left. If that is the far left,
Also true.
I've made the complete circle
Well,
around my life.
they
So-
certainly are when they go to the heart of thinking that our president should be subject to the 25th Amendment.
There's-
That is such a far-reaching
All right, now,
idea that has to be.
we got to cut this
insane.
up a little bit because we have the situation where there's been enough evidence presented, circumstantial and otherwise, that there were a number of people in high positions in the FBI that didn't like Donald Trump, including James Comey. Didn't
Strzok.
like him. Strzok, Lisa
Page.
Page,
Right.
the Chinese guy, I forgot his name. So that's one piece of this story. But now Donald Trump is elected. And there's also some evidence, or certainly circumstantial evidence, that maybe people closely associated with Donald Trump were maybe a little cozy with the Russians, a little cozier than a Republican presidential candidate normally would be. So if there is a belief by the chief investigative agency of the country, i.e. the FBI, if there's a belief that maybe there's something there that we should look into, aren't they the logical people to look into it?
No.
Why?
Why would they not?
Who's going to
would?
look into it?
Because they have no
let me go back.
authority
If-
to
let-
do
let's turn
so.
back-
They do
let's-
have
let's-
authority.
The
Literally
FBI
the
is
FBI.
subordinate to the executive. It's part of the executive branch. They have no authority to decide that they didn't like the results of the election and to make his life miserable.
Here's the question that I ask. If we turn back the clock, there are some people, some Republicans, who thought that Bill Clinton was too close to Korea,
Okay?
North Korea, okay? And too close to China, because he was giving all this material to China when he was the president of the United States.
Well, we know that Hillary was too close to
Okay,
Russia
so
by
here's
selling
my
off our
question.
uranium.
If we believe that the president of the United States, whether it's Donald Trump or Bill Clinton, there are people in our government that believe that they might be in bed and doing nefarious, illegal things with another nation. Which agency in the United States should investigate?
The United States Congress. That is the only one who has the authority to investigate the president.
You're
on
dead
their
wrong.
own.
You're dead wrong. The FBI has every legal and constitutional right to do so. Whether you think they should have is something else, but don't say they didn't have
The
the right.
FBI
They
is
have an
not in the
absolute
Constitution.
constitutional
How,
right.
how can they have the Constitution? How can a subordinate agency of the executive get to act independently from the executive branch?
It has
How-
always
where is
been.
that in the
It has always
Constitution?
been separated.
Well, we should
These
talk
guys were
about
not
what we
supposed to
know.
meet each other. It is the Justice Department.
But we should talk about what we know. We know that the FISA warrants were falsely given
The
out.
dossier
we know that
was
the dossier was
absurd.
was definitely something from the Democrat National Committee and
Begun by a
Hillary
Republican.
Clinton. And we know that a number of these people have lied, including McCabe himself. And yet nothing's being investigated in that realm right now. No actions have been taken, and yet this guy wants to come out, try and sell
Well,
his
he
book.
was fired.
And then
He
has
was
the
fired.
Ford lost his pension, and now he's written the book,
Yeah.
and he's going to play catch up.
Yeah, I mean, it's the same thing. Comey and McCabe are both on book tours trying to make money.
Right.
They are not, and they're trying to clothe themselves in the dignity of their office, and it is unbecoming because
They ought to be grateful to Comey because he helped elect Donald Trump. His interventions, which were the excuse they used to fire him, his interventions in that campaign in the last month and then the last 10 days,
Yes.
I believe were pivotal to electing Trump.
okay.
So
I
why
believe that
dislike
too.
Comey? Why should you guys be against Comey?
well, if you-
I'm
Well,
against him for
because
that.
If you-
I don't
if
like
you
bad
read
actors
his
no
own
matter what
book-
they're doing.
If you read his own book, he's a sanctimonious, like I'm the only
Saint in
actor
the room. Yeah, right.
exactly.
Right.
And it's a load of hogwash.
I'm just saying is
I've
that
never met anybody in politics like that. I can't imagine.
right? But this guy is supposed to be a career bureaucrat.
what I come back to is if someone believes, if there is evidence to suggest that the President of the United States might have done something nefarious with
Show me the
another
evidence.
nation, in my view, it has always been the role of the FBI to look into that because they're supposed to look for spies and acts of
And there's already
sedition.
been a number of indictments of the people that were already around him while he was campaigning and during his business dealings.
And nothing related to the campaign.
nothing
Well,
related to
nothing
him.
related
Right,
to
but
the
we're not there
campaign.
yet.
But
We're not done.
Nothing.
We're not done
Oh,
yet,
I think
right?
we're done.
So
Like
let
we
me-
still have a report coming out.
I will put this
and
marker
all
down.
the reports that have been coming out are heavily redacted for a reason. And so I think as soon as the Mueller report comes out, we'll have a full visual of what
There's
happened.
nothing.
Do the American people deserve that report to be made public?
Absolutely, at this
Absolutely.
point.
Yes, it should
Everybody.
be
Yeah.
public.
Everybody
It should
wants
not
it.
be
Yeah.
redacted.
Yeah, I mean, it's
Absolutely.
this farce has been going on for 2 years, right?
Yeah, definitely.
And
I mean, as
like
long as
if
it's
it if it ends with anything other than a public report,
Yeah, but the speculation is now that it may not.
I don't know why that is. The only reason that I would be behind it not is if it's like a national security thing. If there's anything in there that could endanger the
sources
lives of
Government
Americans
always
or
some
hides
something.
methods.
behind
Yeah.
national security.
But if it's just whatever, just put it out. Let everyone. make their
It's
own mind.
acknowledged
Yeah.
that there could be some redacted parts in there. First of all, because there's grand jury information,
Okay.
and which should not be made public except under extraordinary circumstances. There's also some national security thing. You might have the name of our spies in Russia.
Right.
You know, this kind
That's
of thing
fair.
going
Yeah,
on.
sources and methods
okay.
should
Yeah,
be redacted,
so,
right?
I'm glad we all agree it should come out, whether you think it's a
So they're gonna
farce
put it out now.
or you think
absolutely.
it's a
Okay.
Bible. It
Here's-
should come out.
Here's another question for the Republicans here. Donald Trump, throughout the campaign, said he had no communication with the Russians. He didn't have any
Soviets.
business. He didn't have any business with them. He never met Vladimir Putin. He said it repeatedly. Now, one piece of evidence or one piece of testimony that came out recently from Michael Cohen, and he's probably going to get a chance to repeat it this coming week, is that in the closing months of the campaign, in October of 2016, there was discussions going on for a Trump property in Moscow. And part of that was they were going to offer Vladimir Putin some great, suite in this hotel. Now, this is going on within 30, 45 days of Election Day. Is
Okay,
that too late? And I'm going to ask the question, then we got to go there. Is that too late in the campaign for Donald Trump to be trying to make a deal with the Russians? That's the question. We're going to get the Republican answer when we come back. 1-800-723-8289. You can come in with your answer as well. Does that smell fishy to you?
Flintstones, meet the Flintstones, they're the modern Sonic family. From the town of Beltway, meet George Jetson. His boy Elroy.
With instant acceleration, electric cars are more fun to drive and more affordable than ever. Electric cars are here. Plug in to the present.
Dallas, St. Louis, Nashville, Tuscaloosa. All major cities to feel the destruction caused by a direct hit from a tornado. Is Chicago next? It's not a question of if, but when, and the clock is ticking. Learn what to do now at ready.illinois.gov to become tornado ready.
Bruce DuMont back in Chicago. Question to our Republicans. There's testimony suggesting that Donald Trump was trying to put together a hotel deal in October of 2016, when throughout the campaign, Donald Trump said that he had no business deals with Russia. How do you feel about that?
Whose testimony, Bruce?
Well, it's Michael Cohen's.
Yeah, there you go. Okay.
Okay.
I feel like
Okay.
Michael Cohen's a liar, and he's been proven a liar, and he's been prosecuted for his lying. And why are we going to believe anything Michael Cohen says at this point? So let's see the documents. And besides, I mean, look. There's no doubt. Everybody knew that Trump was a businessman. Everybody knows that he was trying to get a hotel in Russia, and I don't fault him for that. I don't fault him for that at all. Now the timing of it.
Do you fault him for trying to do that in October of 2016, when for the year prior to that he had denied to the American people that he had any business dealings in Russia?
Well,
this
I
was
think,
going on,
I think
you
there's
know-
some nuance of language here. First of all, when Cohen talks about Trump's doing this, does he mean personally Trump? Does he mean some organization of Trump's? Does he mean some business interest that he may have an alliance with? I don't know. So I think that there's some nuances to here, and the man's a business.
So here's the question I have.
We're electing somebody with a lot of business experience.
His business interests are Donald Trump. That is a very, very closely held organization. And if somebody, obviously he's not in Moscow writing the deal, and obviously he has one or two other people scoping things out, including family members. But their presence is he. that's as tight an organization as probably, if you can call it an organization, as exists in this country.
Here's the question I
We
have.
speculate on that. I'd like to see exactly what that means.
How did the Russians keep Hillary from campaigning in Wisconsin?
Oh, there's
Right.
there's no question about it.
Like,
I'm not.
that's the question I have, right? So
I'm not-
everybody likes to believe that it's Russia's fault that Hillary missed a layup. Hillary screwed that campaign up.
By the way, I've been saying that from the end of the campaign, but I do want to put it in context. Is if Donald Trump throughout the campaign was saying that there was no business deals going on, and it turns out that there were business deals going on in October, I mean, I would like to know that. It doesn't. It's a piece of information that I think the American people should
Sure, I'd
have.
love to know it too.
Some people, it wouldn't mean anything to them. I'm just saying it's a piece of information I would want to know.
The idea that Russia tipped the election for Donald Trump is wish casting. It is trying to explain how Hillary missed what should have been an easy election. She was in
totally agree.
Arizona
Wait.
trying to run the score up in the Electoral College
totally agree.
instead of being in Wisconsin. And it was her election to lose. I thought she was going to lose.
I just-
I thought she was going to win.
Yeah, look,
Right?
I just, this is what I see. I see that Trump is going around the world and pulling out of this and pulling out of that and talking to this place and talking to that and basically disrupting and incredibly changing our foreign policy that we've had for a long time, or even new policies that we entered into. And it all always seems to align with what the Russian government would like to see the United States doing in a weakened state of power.
That is absolutely false.
No, and don't get me wrong, I'm not saying that by talking to North Korea that's like a terrible thing. I think we should have open dialogue with people that we disagree with, hence this show, right? But I think pulling out of this treaty or this accord.
So you think that he shouldn't have pulled out of the ICBM missile treaty?
The START treaty.
The
yeah.
START treaty. Should he
Why
not have
would
done
Russia-
that?
why would Russia
Russia's
want us-
already Russia had already violated that treaty.
I mean, American
we-
soldiers have killed Russians in Syria, right?
Right,
if
let's
you look
let-
at the
let's let
actual
Derek-
policies
let's
of
let
the
Derek
Clinton
respond.
administration.
right? So there were a lot of people figured out that we needed to be in that region for a reason. And again, as a non-interventionist, I didn't want us there in the first place as well. But to hastily pull out, right, because almost on a whim to please a base, and then allow again,
Which-
Russia
Which
Russia
base?
has
That's
interest.
interesting.
Russia has
That doesn't
interest
make
in that
sense.
region as well, right?
Wait,
Are we
the
talking
Wall
about the
Street
Syrian
Journal opined
conflict?
against it. The National Review opined against it. Conservative commentators throughout the
Okay,
U.S.
so
actually opined
Lethal aid to
against
Ukraine?
pulling out of Syria, pulling out of Afghanistan.
Yeah.
How is that playing to his base? The fact that he is pulling back military assets.
no, I'm
It's
with-
not playing to his base. It's actually the
I
opposite.
just think the way that a lot of the things that he's been doing are just hastily done. It's done without any actual thought to it in the first
I
place,
just
and it
completely
always seems to
disagree.
align.
Don Rose,
And I have
what-
complete confidence in Pompeo, by the way, a West Pointer.
Don Rose, what,
If he ever listens to Pompeo or listens to anybody else.
Don Rose, what do you think the president's goal is in his meeting in Vietnam with Kim Jong-un next week?
He has 2 or 3 goals, one of which is to distract from some of the negative stuff that's going on
Oh, but this
here.
has been on the books for a long time.
Number 2, he is looking for that Nobel Peace Prize. He is looking for a win that he can use for the campaign. And just as, he's going to come back, as he came back from the first one, saying, we won. There is no nuclear problem.
What's he trying to distract from right now that's happening in the U.S.? What's the distraction?
All of this negative publicity around the whole investigation.
Michael Cohen is
And-
going
and
to
Michael
distract from
Cohen's,
the president.
thing,
Exactly.
He's coming
I think
before,
the opposite.
Cohen is his baby.
I actually think that he's in a very strong position right now. You've got the trade deal with China moving forward with incredible momentum, and that's going to be a win-win. You've got, at least a semblance of foreign policy with North Korea. He's trying to sit down with them. You haven't had a missile attack or a missile launching from them since November of 2017.
They
His-
dismantled one of their test sites.
They did
it's
all that they
doing pretty
needed to
well.
do. That's why they were ready to negotiate. You know damn well that they're not going to give up very much of their nuclear power there, because their nuclear power is what got them where they did. And they know very well what happened when Gaddafi agreed to denuclearize. So, this idea of denuclearization of any significant amount in North Korea is a unicorn.
Do you agree with that?
No, I think that there's an opportunity here. I think that the North Koreans are in dire straits, and I think that if we can continue to put the economic pressure on them, that I think actually Chairman Kim may come to the table and may do something. I actually firmly believe that if anybody can get a deal done with Chairman Kim, it's somebody like Donald Trump.
I mean, this problem has been a problem since Carter, right? Every president since Carter has tried to reintegrate North Korea back into the world fold, right? The diplomatic fold. I think that Trump has made more progress than Obama did or than Bush did. We need to be cognizant of the Kim family's bait and switches, history of bait and switches, where they take, food aid, for example, and then continue to do whatever they were doing before. But it's positive. I mean, there have been 5 or 6 Americans that have come home, have been able to come home from North Korea as formerly as prisoners since these talks began.
Okay.
I would submit that most of this was all possible because North Korea, under its present leadership, finally reached a point of strength where they felt that they could act. All this time that they were double-crossing Carter and double-crossing Bush, all along, they were building. And when they built to the point that they felt they had the strength to scare the pants off everybody with their missiles and with their nuclear instruments, they're ready to talk, and they're ready to give up a little bit.
Don, the one hope I have, though, is that we have maybe something percolating like you had with the end of the Cold War.
Well,
where literally the Soviet Union basically collapsed because they could not sustain it. They economically couldn't sustain anything, and their people, the disruption began in Poland, obviously, and that filtered over, and people started to grow strength. And now you've got kind of an opening between South and North Korea, and they've had the same sort of propaganda going in from South Korea over the radio waves into North Korea. You've got a populace that is essentially enslaved in North Korea, and I am hopeful that really they can no longer economically sustain anything in that country, and the unrest is going to come to the point where Kim's going to have to come to the table to get something done.
He's also getting...
That's what my hope is.
Well, that's a
North
hope.
Korea
And
is
I
also-
would
That is
agree
my
with
hope.
it as a hope.
Yeah.
I just don't believe it.
Well, it did happen that's how we got the Soviet Union to back down, though, economically.
But North Korea is also dealing with a different South Korea, a different South
Absolutely
Korean
they
leader.
are.
And South Korean leader, I mean, he may be the guy that gets the Nobel Peace Prize.
Right.
Because he's making everybody,
That's right.
his interest is the future of South Korea. And he is moving the needle significantly. And I think that what comes out of this is, there's going to be another summit meeting. There may be a summit meeting once a year. Maybe there's once a year through 2020 or 2024, and that's the relationship we have. And during that period of time, there are no nukes. They may be building their nukes. They're not giving them up. I also believe I don't think North Korea is going to give up all their nukes.
The way to
But
North
my
Korea
point
is the way to
the
North
point
Korea.
is, it'll be a situation where they'll have nukes, we'll have nukes, but there'll be coexistence because you know what? Because Donald Trump and Kim Jong-un, they get along.
Yeah, and that's fine.
They don't want to kill each other,
Yeah,
and they don't need to kill each other.
It's the same thing with the Soviet Union.
Yes.
It's MAD, mutually assured destruction.
Yeah, basically.
There's no
None of those people, we were not going to bomb them, and they were not going to bomb us. Because they know if they made
There's
one
no
aggressive move,
comparison.
they would turn that whole country into nuclear wasteland.
Yeah, there is no comparison between the
suicidal.
military strength of North Korea and the military strength of the Soviet Union
there's no
in the
comparison.
80s. Like, America with conventional weapons could make, like putting aside the nuclear arsenal, could make that entire country a crater. And North Korea knows that.
Yeah, that's
They
why
know
won't
it,
do
but
anything.
also,
know it.
That's why they won't do
That's why
anything.
they're in my view, they're not going to give it up.
Yeah.
And again, Kim Jong-un, he's as happy with these summit meetings as Donald Trump.
Yep.
Yeah,
Okay,
it
they
gives them
each can
presence
do
on a
their
world
separate things,
stage.
and they go back
Well,
to
I
their
would say it's
domestic
better
file
than them
shortly.
If you look hard enough, go off the beaten track far enough, you'll find an America teeming with the unusual, the odd, the downright strange.
I'm Will Klinger, and I'm your guide on a package tour we like to call
Wild Travels.
Join us on our weekly road trip to see America's most offbeat and unusual attractions. Wild Travels, available on your local PBS station, or it darn well should be.
When CSX moves forward, so do the rest of us.
Bruce DuMont back in Chicago. Let's go to Mike listening to us on KXLY in Spokane, Washington. Go ahead.
Oh, thanks, Bruce. Thanks for taking my call. See, we don't want to start playing the shell game with North Korea. Are the missiles here? Are they there? We don't want to be surprised and learn one day that there are 20 missiles ready for a launch. Inspections are mandatory and necessary, and if not, then sanctions should be enforced.
Well, sanctions are being enforced, and I don't think
And they're being
they've-
effective.
How do we know that?
Well,
Because the Kim regime is coming to the table, or it has already come to the table, instead of continuing this recalcitrance that they've demonstrated during the Obama administration.
Jeannie, do you think, and again, I personally do not believe that North Korea would ever denuclearize. I mean, the reason that they're a power is because we think they have weapons, and in fact, they have weapons already. I don't think anybody's surprised with that. Should we be willing to say that we would pull out all U.S. military personnel from South Korea as our part of a bargain if indeed they ever did agree to get rid of all their nukes? Again, obviously with oversight to make sure they actually did it. Is that something we should promise?
Well, we've been working with the South Koreans for decades, right? And so that they're well equipped to handle their own defense to some degree. And we have bases throughout the whole Southeast area. So whether or not we have to have troops stationed on South Korea proper, I guess it depends on how the deal is written. But I don't know if anybody believes that Korea is actually going to give up nuclear weapons. I mean, that is the big question.
Agree. It would have to be the most not just verifiable, but verified before they did that.
Yeah, there's no way.
Right.
There's no way that the United States pulls out of South Korea, because I don't even think South Korea wants us to pull out.
Right.
Right. I mean, we still have a huge
Well, what if
military
North Korea,
presence in
what
Japan.
if North Korea wants it?
This is it. It doesn't
we don't
matter.
trust
I don't
them.
know if that's
We
on the
don't-
table.
all right,
It doesn't
okay,
matter.
all right. I'm just saying is what is Kim Jong-un going to ask for in return if he decides I'm going to denuke my entire country? What does he get in return? Let's say all the sanctions go off.
Yeah.
The president is going to make the point, allegedly, when he's in Vietnam. This is a great country now. Look at the success it has here. Vietnam could be North Korea in 5 or 10 years if you turn our way.
I think
is that going to be enough?
I think he's self-interested. I think he wants economic prosperity that he controls. I think that's far more important to him than anything else. Because what else
Important
can he
to
get?
Kim?
To Kim himself and his family and his dynasty.
Right.
I think he just wants to control all the economics of that country. I don't think he really cares to invest much more into this. This was only a tool for him to get what he wanted in the end.
What about
Bruce?
Yes, go ahead, Mike.
I think troops should stay in Korea, at least some troops in South Korea, but also we could perhaps reduce our missiles, eliminate some of our missiles.
So I was gonna say, well, hold on. I was gonna say it's very like, how do we get to go around the world and say you can't have this, but we can, right? Like our
Because
protection.
we're not starving our people to death.
Well, you know what? Take a trip on the south side a little bit, and then tell me that again. All right. So, there are.
I'm sorry, you're comparing
cannot-
poverty in
you
the
cannot
South
do
Side to the Kim regime's enslavement of their people.
All right, loosely connected. I
Those are
will
not-
I will
Can't
concede,
even
but at the
loosely
same
connected,
time,
Derek.
look,
finish, let him
There's
finish.
no
loosely connected, I will concede. But at the same time, you understand what I'm saying, so don't trivialize it in that manner. Yes, what Kim is doing to his people is insane. They are programmed to believe that America is the enemy. I'm aware of all of this, but at the same time, we keep poking at these countries around the world, and it never works out for us in the end. The only thing we have to do in return for what we do to other people's countries is make more weapons for ourselves, because we're the target of attacks constantly because of the things that we're continuously doing throughout the world. Again, that's part of the non-interventionist policy.
So
of this
are
country.
you suggesting we pull out of NATO?
No, I think NATO was set up.
What are you suggesting
I am
then? Are you suggesting that we don't help allies anywhere at any point?
Well, here's the thing.
we're
There's a difference
protecting
between
Japan.
helping
More about
allies
helping
and
South
creating
Korea.
conflict. That's what I'm saying.
This is about South
So-
Korea and Japan.
Let him
So,
finish.
so what I'm saying is there's a difference between assisting allies when they're asking us for help or creating a conflict, right? And I think more often than not that what we have historically done is created conflicts. We were talking about Latin America, and like to bring back the architect of Iran-Contra who was convicted of wrongdoings, and then signing him as the ambassador back to Venezuela, or the special envoy, or whatever his title is now. Like, why are we doing that again? And that's what I'm saying, is that we're continuously doing that over and over, instead of maybe the answer is yes.
So
no.
what do you mean?
Because-
So,
so
you're
maybe the answer-
okay with
What-
Korea
what is
firing
that?
off
Jeannie,
missiles?
Jeannie.
Here's the thing.
So it's okay that North Korea continues to fire off missiles, and we should just let Japan and South Korea just in the Philippines and anybody else
No,
within
but they're
range
not-
there.
but they're not.
Worry about it? Should we just let them worry about it?
There's
and
been
not
no
do that?
damage done by those tests.
And that's what I'm saying. They're
The-
shooting them off
the
into
North
the ocean.
Koreans sunk a South Korean Corvette.
I don't approve of it, but
With a submarine.
let's face it, these were not warlike gestures.
That's
This
what I'm
is- this
saying,
is the
like,
thing.
Retaliate
taken
when
that way.
attacked, right? So, like, for instance, like when I was deployed, it was I was only allowed to engage if I was first engaged upon, right? And like, I may not have liked it, but every time I drove outside the wire, I had to be hit first, and that was just the way it was, okay? Because that was the right thing to do, and so that's what I'm saying as an American powerhouse in the world. That
That's
should
why
be
we're
our policy.
And that's why we're pursuing a diplomatic solution. Like, nobody is seriously entertaining a military intervention in North Korea.
We're sitting here
And-
talking
and-
about leaving troops in Korea for what reason?
Because the South Koreans want them there. It's the same reason
It's a
that we still have a
deterrence
huge.
effect.
It's the
It's a
same
deterrent.
reason we still have a
It's a
huge
show of
base in
force.
It's a
Okinawa.
deterrence
Right, and
effect.
that's
It's
the
a
same
show of
reason why
force.
we
It's the
have
same
bases
thing we
all
do
around the
everywhere.
world too,
The
right?
reason
Right.
the reason we have bases around the world is because the United
World War
States
II.
the United States is the guarantor of world security.
That's exactly
Right,
right.
and the
Are you
reason
suggesting
we
we
leave
leave
United
Kaiserslautern,
States-
Germany?
the reason that the sea lanes are patrolled by our
Yeah,
fleet.
Are you
yes, I would
suggesting
like.
we leave
I would like. I
Ramstein
would
Air
like.
Base? Are you
yes,
suggesting
yes,
that we
I would
leave- Oh.
like to reduce the number of military bases around the world. Look, this is what I. This
Our
is what I
allies
truly
want
believe.
us there.
This is what I. Well,
Okay.
I think that there's longstanding agreements between political powers. Not like normal people. I think if you talk to most normal people in those places, and I understand that they're not tasked with their own
No,
security.
they're thrilled to have us
but
there
they're-
because they like the economic
But, yeah, the number of
benefits
jobs
of it as well.
No, but wait a minute.
And they're not-
If
they're
we're-
not
wait,
having to
wait,
pay for their own
Jeannie, though,
defense.
wait. If we want NATO to pay its fair share
That's also true.
of,
They are.
and they're now coming to do it because
Yep,
the president's
that's
asked.
right.
I mean, should we also ask some of these other countries to continue to pay a much greater percentage, even more so than what they know for NATO?
Sure, but that's
They
different
may
than.
like us there because we're
fine.
good business.
but
for them.
but that's different than pulling
Gonna
out
pause
entirely.
back shortly from Chicago.
That's
Welcome to the world 2116. You can fly across town in minutes or across the globe in under an hour. Whole communities are living on Mars. And solar satellites provide Earth with unlimited clean power. In less than a century, Boeing took the world from seaplanes to space planes, across the universe and beyond. And if you thought that was amazing, you just wait.
Today, fresh fruits and vegetables will go from a field in California to a grocer in Miami. A bottle of beer from Eagle Pass will journey to a restaurant in Manhattan. A 2x4 in Oregon will find its way to a townhome in Denver. A hybrid will say goodbye to Detroit and hello to a showroom in Austin. While a steel beam will leave a mill in Illinois for a high-rise in Phoenix. And a flat screen in China will head to an electronics store in Memphis. Because today, as every day, wherever you find business, you'll find us.
Live from Chicago, it's Saturday Night Live, The Experience. For the first time ever, get an inside look at the making of SNL. Over 500 artifacts direct from the show. Be a part of Wayne's World, Weekend Update, and so much more. Experience all it takes to put the show together. Now at the Museum of Broadcast Communications at 360 North State Street in Chicago. For tickets, visit museum.tv.